لكن تحديت الظروف وخضتها وحدي صبورا مستعينا بالصلاة. كم مرة عصف الأنين بداخلي، كم مرة قد ذاق قلبي من أساه محن تمر، وكم كرهت مصابها.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. About 9 or 10 days ago, I published a video titled Cooperation for the Good of the Ummah, and Rafidha in brackets, as I received numerous messages throughout my social media accounts. It opened up a healthy, decent discussion across all social media platforms. Roughly about 3 or 4 days ago, by the time this video comes out, it'll be probably 4 to 5 days, that Iran has launched missile attacks in 3 different regions. So Idlib in northern Syria, Kurdistan, and today or yesterday, Pakistan. Now, Iran have argued they were targeting, Mossad targets or certain groups operating in X, Y, and Z territory. And once again, the debate or the discussion has opened up again. Not many people know about the crimes that were perpetrated by the Rafidha Shia militias in Iraq. Because it was over 20 years ago, the finer details to the Western world are not really known. Now, let's be sincere and just. To understand what took place in Iraq post-invasion, you need to go back, right? And there's no doubt, and no one can deny, that the Ba'athist regime led by Saddam Hussein, rahmatullah alayhi, was very, very oppressive. And he himself was a Ba'athi socialist tyrant for the crimes that he committed. And whilst he was oppressive, the invasion or post-invasion brought about many difficult challenges for Iraq. When the Americans launched their invasion in 2003, which was illegal, was built upon a pack of lies, none of those world leaders who made those decisions have been called to account to stand trial at The Hague. But hey ho, we don't expect anything less, do we? And when the Americans invaded, the majority Shia Rafidha parties took control. And the Grand Ayatollah As-Sistani prevented any retaliation to the occupying force. As per international law, it's clear that any occupying nation has the right to defend themselves. Ayatollah Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah, released a fatwa saying it's impermissible to resist against the Americans. So let's play Rafi Rafa'i, the Grand Mufti of Iraq, to confirm this.
قال لا وجود للجهاد في زمان الغيبة، فشيء اسمه جهاد في زمان الغيبة لم يكن، لذلك دخل الأمريكان ولم يحاربوا من قبل الشيعة، وهذا معلوم.
So you heard Mufti Rafi Rafa'i confirmed that when the Americans invaded Iraq, Ayatollah Sistani issued an edict or a fatwa preventing any form of resistance, because according to Shia doctrine, there is no concept of jihad. until the emergence of the hidden imam. I mean, in the time of the major occultation, al-Ghaybat al-Kubra, you got Ghaybat al-Sugra, which was the early occultation, and you got the Ghaybat al-Kubra, which is now. So there was no resistance against the American invasion, because according to Ayatollah Sistani, there was no such thing as jihad until the return of the hidden imam. And then he highlighted the atrocities and absolute barbaric crimes perpetrated by the sectarian, as he mentioned, sectarian regime, which was at this time Aid al-Lawi, then it was Nuri al-Maliki, and then it changed to Haydar al-Abadi, if the chronology is correct. When George W. Bush, following on from his father, led the war in Iraq, the illegal war in Iraq, along with his sidekick Tony Blair, two war criminals in fact who have never been tried and never been brought to The Hague. That's a different discussion altogether. It was replaced with so much turbulence that post-invasion brought about al-Qaeda, and then later on that group merged into Daesh or ISIS. After America invaded Iraq, many dissidents who opposed Saddam Hussein arrived back and trickled back into Iraq. One of the main Shia militias and their head that returned back to Iraq was Hadi al-Amari. Hadi al-Amari was an Iraqi dissident who fought with Iran against Saddam Hussein. So he was a fanatical, extremist, sectarian Shia, right, or Rafidha. And his organization, Munazzamat al-Badr, goes back to the 80s. And they were the ones that collaborated with Iran. And I will even show you videos where Hadi al-Amari, in his young days, was fighting alongside Iran against Iraq. So what I'm trying to get to, and be patient with me, this will be very comprehensive, just to give you a bit of background, is that in 2003 and 4, Shia militias operated freely in Iraq, causing sectarian strife and violence. And the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention, along with Al-Munazzamat al-Badr, which is founded by, or not founded by, but it was, I think, Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim, that was, and the Hakim family are prominent Shia clerics from Najaf. But that's, again, we're going to get to this slowly. Anyway, so you had Hadi al-Amari, you had the Hakim family, and then you also had the Sadr family in Baghdad. So you had the Sadr family in Baghdad, you had the Hakim family in Najaf, and then you had Hadi al-Amari, who later on took on Munazzamat al-Badr, returned back to Iraq. And these militias, we had Jaysh al-Mahdi from Muqtada al-Sadr, obviously his father was executed by Saddam. Then you had militias such as Jaysh al-Mahdi and others, which we're going to touch on later. The reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is that there's an argument due to the American invasion. Al-Qaeda was born, and then you had other groups that were fighting against the Americans. These two militia groups, Munazzamat al-Badr and Jaysh al-Mahdi, between 2003 and 2006 were responsible for carrying out extrajudicial killings of Sunnis from either mixed Sunni Shia areas or areas that they had control, i.e. those who were traveling, they had checkpoints, and they used to carry extrajudicial killings. So as you can see on screen, we've got an article that mentions 3,000 citizens, Iraqis, who carry the name Umar. They've requested to change their names due to fear of being killed. This is written in Baghdad by Dr. Hamid Abdullah. And in the article it mentions that there's areas where there's Munatik Mukhtalifa Ta'ifiyan. There's sort of mixed areas, and they've changed their names or requested that they change their names because of fear of being killed. Now, come back to me now. So this was the environment and atmosphere that Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah were living in Iraq. Yes, 2006 we're going to get to the shrine bombings in Samarra in 2006. But the sectarian killings, because that's the argument, they go, oh, Zarqawi fueled, sectarian tensions because of his extremism. They were extremists, and we call out extremism, whether it's Sunnah and Shia. We don't care. Extremism is a problem. But the sectarian killings and the vacuum left when Saddam Hussein was toppled. All of these dissidents start coming. You've heard Aid Alawi, then Nur al-Maliki, and what was the other one? Haidar al-Abadi. These were prime ministers, obviously, after the invasion. But the sectarian killings that took place in Iraq was caused by these extremist Shia militia groups. No one can argue that the sectarian strife was caused by these Shia militias. And they were the ones that were setting up checkpoints. And anyone on their ID that carried the name Umar or Abu Bakr or Aisha were executed in cold blood. And this is known. So in 2006, right? In 2006, yes, there was the shrine bombings in Samarra, the shrine of Hassan al-Askari, and that fueled even more sectarian tension. Jaysh al-Mahdi, which is the militia founded by Muqtada al-Sadr, he had a dispute by an individual named Qais al-Khaz'ali. And they had a dispute, and Qais al-Khaz'ali, as you can see his photo here, he founded a militia called Asa'ib Ahl al-Haq. So he split from Jaysh al-Mahdi, and these individuals were carrying out extrajudicial killings of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah between 2003 and 2006, which led to this tension between Sunnah and Shia. And Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah suffered. Now you can argue, and this is a counter-argument, that yes, Saddam Hussein persecuted the Shia. I'm not denying that. Saddam Hussein persecuted many others amongst Ahl Sunnah, amongst the Kurds and the Shia. But then what happened was, when Saddam Hussein was toppled and post-invasion, he allowed all of these militias to come together and commit all sorts of war crimes. Now, if you look, we've got these militias, all their logos, operating in Iraq with full freedom and no repercussions from the Iraqi government. So, you've got Liwa Abu al-Fadl, you've got Asa'ib al-Haq, you've got Harakatul Sabirin, you've got Siraj Zahra, you got Kitab al-Imam Ali. You got various militias, Liwa al-Imam Hussein, Kata'ib Hizbullah, Fayliq al-Wa'ad al-Sadiq, Harakatul Nujaba. You got Sirai al-Mukhtar, you got Sirai al-Khurasani. You have all of these militias operating, even having a framework within the law to operate as militias. And then they formed it to Hajj al-Sha'bi. Now, let's go back to Hadi al-Amari, which I mentioned was the militia group along with Jaysh al-Mahdi. Then obviously Jaysh al-Mahdi, you had Qais al-Khaz'ali, who split from Jaysh al-Mahdi, and he found his own militia, Asa'ib Ahl al-Haq. Let's listen to Hadi al-Amari, who's Iraqi, who joined this sort of Wilayat al-Faqih extremist, well, not even extremist, this is like 12 Rafidism. And he joined the side of Iran during the Iran-Iraq war. Let's listen to him.
رأي الإمام إنه الآن وقف إطلاق النار والجمهورية الإسلامية نحن مع الإمام حتى آخر قطرة دم. الإمام إذا يقول حرب حرب، الإمام إذا يقول صلح صلح. نعم نحن مع الإمام. نحن نعلم بأنه الإمام هو الآن الإمام الذي يمثل الإسلام. إن شاء الله سنستمر بتوجيه الضربات المهلكة حتى آخر قطرة دم.
Fighting alongside Iran, and he was a dissident living in Iran. He speaks full Persian. And when Saddam Hussein was toppled, he's obviously now leading Munazzamat al-Badr. Obviously, the founder was Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim. And he took it on, came back. Militia Badr was operating freely. And they were carrying out these extrajudicial killings of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah between 2003 and 2006. So this argument that, okay, yes, the extremists, from amongst the Sunnis, exacerbated the sectarian killing after the shrine bombings. And even then, there's a dispute as to whether it was the extremist Sunnis. It said it was planted by the intelligence of Iran to stoke these sectarian tensions. Those dissidents that came back to Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein stoked sectarian tensions, and this is what we're seeing from that time in 2003 when they got power until now, ila yawmina hada. What you see in Syria is a result of this extremist sectarian Rafidah who at any chance would go out, as you see in Syria, to forward their agendas. Geopolitics is very nasty, but the pattern from 2003 and now is 2024, 20 years. The reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is what you see in Syria, it all started in Iraq. The massacres, the butchering. Between 2003 and 2006, as I mentioned, Hadi al-Amari, the dissidents that came back after Saddam fell and these militias were born. Asaib Ahl al-Haq, Jaysh al-Mahdi, Munazzamat al-Badr, Fayliq al-Quds, and all of these militias that was born, others were born later, but the early militias who were carrying out death squads in mixed areas between Sunni and Shia, between 2003 and 2006, they were operating with full freedom. And this was stoked tension, and as you can see, they're stoking it now in Syria. It's still ongoing. As you can see, we've got the human cost of the war in Iraq. This is the Lancet report, a morality study between 2002 and 2006. A new household survey of Iraq has found that approximately 600,000 people have been killed in the violence of the war that began with the US invasion in March 2003. The survey was conducted by an American Iraqi team of public health researchers. Data were collected by Iraqi medical doctors. Analysis conducted by faculty of the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. The results will be published in the British medical journal, The Lancet. When they started their campaign to retake the territories from ISIS or Daesh, sectarian slogans were the order of the day. So as I mentioned earlier, from 2003 and 2006, they were already carrying out extrajudicial killings. Death squads were operating, and as the article suggested, like 3,000 requests to change the name from Amr. This was known, and as I said before, anyone that tries to deny it is ignorant, or number two, he's a sectarian monster himself. So getting back to the events, there was a coalition formed to take back territory from Daesh, and sectarian militias got together and committed all sorts of war crimes. And I will show you sectarian slogans to the point that when we get to Masadir from 12 sources, that what they were committing in terms of genocide, it was genocide in Tikrit, in Fallujah, in Ramadi, and various other provinces within the Sunni majority areas in Al-Anbar province. You would hear that they were blaming the Sunnis in those areas and seeking revenge for the death of Hussein radiallahu anhu. But this is scripturally based. Let's have a listen.
الإمام الحسين سلام الله عليه قال: ألا من ناصر ينصرنا نحن أهل البيت. أنتم أنصار الحسين. أنتم شنو؟ سمعون الحسين. أنتم منو؟ أنصار الحسين. يا لثارات الحسين.
You heard revenge for Hussein radiallahu anhu. What revenge? What has the public of Fallujah got to do with the martyrdom of Hussein radiallahu anhu? It was, like I said, it was sectarian based, this, emphasis of holding Ahl Sunnah responsible. It was a massive issue. And you ask us how we can cooperate with such people, it's impossible. So we're going to get into Quds later to show you that amongst the 12 sources, Quds has no significance. And we're going to show you from the Masadir themselves. There's another city that's got more of importance than Baytul Maqdis. So I don't know what they are shouting Quds and, Al-Quds Day. It's just mere slogans. It means nothing because they don't have any attachment to Quds, and I'll prove it from their own scripture. As you can see, we've got an article from the time, and it mentions Iraq could finally turn the corner against ISIS, but at a potentially higher risk to the future of the divided country. The Iraqi military and its allied militias are now engaged in intense fighting on the edges of the city of Fallujah in an effort to reclaim the city from ISIS militants. The offensive is a critical test for Iraq's disparate armed forces in the broader war against ISIS, which overran a large portion of the country in mid-2014. Backed by US-led air power. So who was it backed by? US led air power. To add emphasis to my point, let's play a clip from a Iraqi TV channel called Dijla, Qanat Dijla, and they even confirmed that Americans, okay, whilst they were obviously supporting these militias, they knew of the war crimes committed by these militias, and they asked them to withdraw because they were operating with total disregard, and they were fighting based on sectarian grounds. Have a listen.
بعد تصريحات وزير الخارجية الأمريكية التي طلب فيها الميليشيات الإيرانية بالعودة إلى ديارها طلبات من قادة في الحشد الشعبي بإخراج المستشارين الأمريكيين من العراق.
So you heard Iranian trained militias, منظمة البدر led by Hadi al-Amri. You've got Asaib al-Haq led by Qais al-Khazali. These are Iran, even Jaysh al-Mahdi by Muqtada al-Asad. These are Iranian trained. And you really think that Iran has the interest of Palestine and Gaza, where they're the ones that are training Shia death squads and militias and Rafidha to go and, commit war crimes in Iraq and in Syria and wherever else? Like, seriously, is this what you really believe? Let's go to a human rights report, okay, so you can read it for yourself. As you can see on screen, we've got a report from Amnesty International, as you can see on screen, and the report is called Iraq Turning a Blind Eye, the arming of the popular mobilization youth, Hajj al-Sha'bi. So let's go to the executive summary. Proliferation of arms and ammunition to armed groups and militias across Iraq has devastating impacts on civilians. It has contributed to a catalogue of gross and systematic human rights abuses and violations of international humanitarian law, and dragged the country into a spiral of insecurity and instability. The massive leakage of Iraqi military stocks to the armed group calling itself Islamic State, and the disastrous consequences for civilians have been well documented, including by Amnesty International in a 2015 report. So this is going back as well. And he mentions, since June 2014, PMU militias have extrajudicially executed or otherwise unlawfully killed, tortured and abducted thousands of men and boys. Victims were picked up from their homes, workplaces, camps for internally displaced persons, checkpoints or other public places. Some were later found shot dead. Thousands more are still missing, weeks, months and years after they were abducted. Amnesty International has documented such violations by PMU. Listen, militias in and around Baghdad and in the Anbar, as I mentioned, Fallujah, Tikrit and whatnot. Where did they mention? Salahuddin, Diyala and Kirkuk governance. These militias have been operating above the law, have been armed to the teeth by the Iraqi government and those who supply them, and they've committed all sorts of human rights violations and abuses. How can this go on? How can this go on? And is there any cooperation with these same militias who are now currently 2003 and 2024? What did they do to our brothers and sisters in Hims? What they've done to our brothers and sisters in Halab, what they did to our brothers and sisters in Diyala, in Kirkuk, in Tikrit, in Fallujah, in Ramadi, and all the provinces in Anbar. What have they done to Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah? You really think it's possible? Don't worry, we're going to get into how valuable Quds is. It's just sha'arat, it's just like slogans. It don't really mean nothing. Anyway, let's listen to a political analyst by the name of Bahjat al-Kurdi.
العزيز هؤلاء ما ممكن أن يسوون دولة ولا يمكن أن يحررون. الله وكيلك لولا الدعم الغربي والطائرات والتحالف قرية ما يحررون. قرية واحدة ما يحررون.
Now that you open these can of worms, that you open this vacuum, these militias were coming, they had complete authority, they persecuted Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and these are the same militias who now gain power and strength, who are heading off to Syria and heading off to those areas to also continue their persecution as they committed on our Iraqi brothers and sisters from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And then I ask you, do you really think cooperation is possible with such sectarian monsters? Not at all. Iran does not have the best interests of the Muslim majority world at heart. They've launched missiles into Idlib, they've launched missiles into Kurdistan, they've launched missiles into Pakistan. They've been training death squads, militias since 2004, or if not 2003. Anyone who believes this is gullible. Even those living in a mixed environment as you know, the Iraqis and Lebanese, they never say, unite and cooperate, because it's impossible considering the state of play right now. This part of the video, I'm going to show and prove that Jerusalem and that part of al-Sham has no religious significance in Rafidism. It doesn't. And I will prove this. And there's another land that is more holier than Bayt al-Maqdis or even Bilad al-Sham or the surrounding areas. You might think, whoa, what's going on here? So this, Al-Quds Day, it's just politics. In like what you find, like, okay, they mention Quds and our Sunni leaders are really falling behind. But I'm speaking scripturally. There's nothing in Rafidism that has any confirmation of significance of Bayt al-Maqdis and the surrounding areas. So why do they do it? Because it doesn't have any basis according to their own understanding of Islam. Another land is more superior. So as I said, it's just geopolitics. They're playing with the people. Now, as you can see on screen, so it's been narrated by Abi Abdullah, that from his father, so this is commonly known, there's a skip in the chain, but it's like this Isma thing, isn't it? That when he was informed that Amir al-Mu'minin heard that Muawiyah gathered 100,000, قال من أي القوم, which people? And they responded by saying من أهل الشام, from the people of Sham. So Ali radiallahu anhu responded by saying لا تقولوا من أهل الشام الشام. Ali radiallahu anhu responded by saying لا تقولوا من أهل الشام ولكن قولوا من أهل الشم. It says, don't say that they're from al-Sham, but say they're the people from al-Shum, meaning the people of destruction and doom. For they are the descendants of Mudar, like meaning from those who are harmful. And they are being cursed by the Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, and Allah made them apes and pigs. So, come back to me now. So, you see? So, al-Sham is a blessed land, according to the Quran, and according to the prophetic ahadith. But according to tribalism, al-Sham is al-Shum. And there's many other narrations that are similar. Which land was I referring to that is more virtuous than Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, and the surrounding areas? It's actually Kufa. And according to Shia traditions, the Prophet ﷺ didn't actually go to Bayt al-Maqdis. He didn't go there. He actually went to Iraq. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm not even lying. So when they say Al-Quds Day, and it's just slogan, it's just rhetoric. It's kalam fadi. It's just simple words that they just use to confuse you. Ahlul Sham, Quds, Bayt al-Maqdis, Palestine has no religious significance. So as you can see on screen, we've got Tahdib al-Ahkam by Shaykh al-Ta'ifa al-Tusi. So he mentioned that Abi Bakr al-Hadrami, this is authentic narration by the way, and Abi Ja'far al-Baqir. قال قلت له, I said to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, أي بقاع أفضل بعد حرم الله وحرم رسول الله. So which land is better after the Haramillah, after the sanctuary of Mecca, and the Haram of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? You would think he will say Bayt al-Maqdis or Ard al-Mubaraka, al-Sham, or whatever. No. Al-Kufa. Al-Kufa. Okay? In Iraq. يا أبا بكر هي زكية طاهرة فيها قبور النبيين المرسلين وغير المرسلين. He mentions that it is Kufa. يا أبو بكر. يا أبا بكر. Because it is pure. And it is clean. And in there has the graves of the prophets and the messengers and other than the messengers. والأوصياء الصادقين, and the truthful successors. وفيها مسجد سهيل الذي لم يبعث الله نبيا إلا وقد صلى فيه. And there's a Masjid Suhailin. Oh, what the hell is Masjid Suhailin? So you see, Quds has no significance. Bayt al-Maqdis has no significance. I'm telling you, in Shiite traditions, you'll find 1, 2, or 3, and these narrations are problematic as well. But the actual land, which is more blessed, more holy, more virtuous than Masjid al-Aqsa, which is in Bayt al-Maqdis, is Kufa. Anyway, and he says that Masjid Suhailin, in it, if you pray, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not sent a prophet except that he was ordered to pray in it. Masjid Suhailin. What the hell is this Masjid Suhailin? And then he ends up by saying, وَفِيهَا يَظْهَرُ عَدْلُ اللَّهِ وَفِيهَا يَكُونُ قَائِمُهُ وَقَوَامٌ مِّن بَعْدِهِ وَهِيَ مَنَازِلُ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالْأَوْصِيَاءِ الصَّالِحِينَ. And he says, in there is justice, that Allah has placed, and they establish it, etc. etc. Then another narration from Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, Mecca is a haram of Allah and a haram of Rasulullah wa haram Ali bin Abi Talib. Okay, hold on, where's Masjid al-Aqsa? You see? Masjid al-Aqsa doesn't have any virtues. So when they say al-Quds and the Rafidha are doing this for Quds, Quds has no significance to them. So what is it? It's just lab. It's just games. It's just like, okay, yeah, you know, it's geopolitics and just to get the attention. That, yes, the traitors and the khawana amongst the leaders of the Sunnis is well known. Anyway, so they mentioned about the salat in it, in Mecca is 100,000, etc. And in Medina is 10,000. And then he mentioned Al-Kufa, etc. has salat of 1,000. But where's Masjid al-Aqsa? That mentioned قال الصادق عليه السلام ما من عبد صالح ولا نبي إلا وقد صلى في مسجد كوفان, that no righteous slave known the Prophet except that he prayed in Masjid Kufan. And then he mentioned that when the Prophet went on his night journey, Jibreel asked him, do you know where you are? And he said that you are in front of Masjid Kufan. So the Prophet didn't go to Baytul Maqdis and led the Prophet in prayer. He went to Iraq and went to Kufa, a city that was founded in the Islamic Empire by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And he asked permission, and then he prayed, and Allah gave him permission, and then he said, this is a garden from the Garden of Paradise, and he mentioned about the prayers and whatnot. Got another narration that Abi Abdullah said, Salat fiha, there was another narration underneath, it said that Abi Abdullah yaqul, Salatun fil Masjid al-Kufa bi alf salat. That praying in Masjid al-Kufa is equivalent to 1,000 prayers. So Masjid al-Aqsa, no prayers. Okay, so here you go, Al-Jami' al-Qutub al-Arba'a, we got Tahdib al-Ahkam. In this book we got Tahdib, and we got, this is volume 2. So carrying on, let's just see what we've got. Oh, we've got a narration in the Surah Al-Kafi, as you can see on screen. So I'm just showing that Bayt al-Maqdis has no value. It has no value according to the Rafidha. It mentions that Imam Bakr alayhi salam was asked about the Bayt al-Maqdis, and he says, فقال لي وهل تعرف بيت المقدس? He goes, do you know what Bayt al-Maqdis is? قلت لا أعرف إلا بيت المقدس الذي بالشام. He goes, I don't know about any Bayt al-Maqdis except the one in the Sham. So the companion of Imam Bakr obviously responded with that, and then Imam Bakr then answered and said, ليس بيت المقدس ولكنه البيت المقدس. He goes, there's no such thing as Baytul Maqdis, meaning the Jerusalem. He goes, but in fact it is the house of the holies. وَهُوَ بَيْتُ آلِ Muhammad. And this is the house of the family of the Prophet. So there's not Baytul Maqdis, meaning Jerusalem. No, it's not that. It is the house of the holies, which is the Prophet's family. You see how they're degrading Al-Quds. Continuing on, we got Tafsir al-Qummi by Ali ibn Ibrahim. And he mentions that Abu Ja'far was raising his head, looking at the sky and pointing towards the Kaaba, looking at the sky and pointing towards the Kaaba times. And then ثم قال, and then he recited the verse, glory be to Allah who took his servant by night to Masjid al-Haram and Masjid al-Aqsa. قرر ذلك 3 مرات. And he kept saying this 3 times. Then he turned towards me. So the narrator is Ismail al-Ju'fi. And then when he turned towards me, he said, أي شيء يقولون أهل العراق في هذه الآيات يا عراقي. He goes, what do the people of Iraq say about this verse, O Iraqi? قلت يقولون أسر به المسجد الحرام إلى البيت المقدس. That the Prophet ﷺ went on a night journey from Masjid al-Haram to Bayt al-Maqdis. فقال لا ليس كما يقولون. No, it's not like what they say. ولكنه أسري به من هذه إلى هذه ويشار بيده إلى السماء وقال وما بينهما الحرم. He said that no, in fact he went from here to here and he pointed towards the sky, and then he said there's no haram between here, and basically there's no other haram between it, meaning he went to the sky. So he didn't even go to Jerusalem, he went to the sky instead. And then you got the virtues of the river Euphrates. No Quds, no mention of Quds. This is Musannaf al-Shaykh al-Mufid, nothing about, even taking a bath in the river Euphrates. It's weird. Then you got Tafsir al-Ayashi, and even then he mentions the narration that Abi Abdullah was asked about the masajid where there is fadl, And the Prophet, and he responded by saying, Masjid al-Haram or Masjid Rasulillah, or Masjid Rasul. And then he said, فَقُلْتُ Masjid al-Aqsa, جِعْتُ فَذَاكَ. Whatever Masjid al-Aqsa, he said, that's in the heavens. And that's where the Prophet ﷺ did the Usriya. But he didn't do the Usriya, he did the Mi'raj there. So this, even then, that's problematic. Collective understanding of the reality and the history of what's been happening, and everything that's following from Iraq is happening in Syria. It all started in Iraq. You know, I've been speaking to ulama in Iraq, I've been speaking to Tulab al-Ilm in Iraq, I don't want to mention no names, and they've been telling me horror stories. And this is just a small research just to show you the names and the militias and everything else that was connected to the Iraq war. You know, the prime ministers were just allowing everything to go on, and they were arming them. It's ridiculous. So please don't fall for this rhetoric. Yes, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid our brothers and sisters in Yemen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid our brothers and sisters in Palestine and fi kulli makan. But at the same time, please don't fall for this trap. Geopolitics is messy at the end of the day. It is. Wallah al-azim, everyone's going to... And geopolitics is messy at the end of the day. But I hope this information was applicable to today's reality. And I stand by my position, and I find that anyone that calls for the opposite is either unaware, ignorant of the reality, or just falling for the usual rhetoric, and we shouldn't be that gullible, and I mean that with full respect. So take care of yourselves. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
ليس الغريب غريب الشام واليمن إن الغريب غريب اللحد والكفن إن الغريب له حق لغربته على المقيمين في الأوطان والسكن سفر بعيد وزاد لن يبلغني وقوتي ضعفت والموت يطلبني ما أحلم الله عني حيث أمهلني وقد تماديت في ذنبي ويسترني تمر ساعة